Imagine a ship where the air is so foul it burns your lungs, where hundreds of bodies are chained together in the dark, unable to move, unable to breathe, where the cries of the living mix with the silence of the dead. This was not a nightmare. This was the Middle Passage. Our story begins far from the stinking holds of a slave ship, in a small village in West Africa, a place of rhythm, of tradition, of life. Kwame was not a king, not a warrior, not a man of great wealth. He was a boy, perhaps no older than 16. He lived with his family among green fields and red earth. His days were filled with laughter, with the pounding of drums, with stories told by the fire. The elders taught him that every person carried the spirit of their ancestors, and that his life was bound to the land and the community around him. But the world was changing. Beyond the coastline, European ships lurked like predators. For decades, the Transatlantic Slave Trade had torn through the continent, feeding human lives into an endless machine of greed. And it was not only the Europeans. Some African rulers and traders, driven by wealth or fear, became middlemen, capturing their neighbors, selling strangers, and sometimes even their own kin into slavery. For Kwame, the storm arrived suddenly. One night, while the village slept, raiders struck. The sounds of cracking torches, screams in the dark, the clash of steel, homes burned, mothers clutched children. Men fought with spears, but guns roared louder. Kwame was seized, bound at the wrists. He called for his mother, his father, but their voices were swallowed by chaos. When the flames died down, the survivors were marched away. The village was silent, except for the crackle of embers. For Kwame, childhood ended in a single night. The journey to the coast was the first stage of captivity, and for many, it was already a death sentence. Kwame was forced into the long march, along with dozens of others, men, women, children. They were bound in coffles, wooden yokes and chains linking necks and ankles. Some walked barefoot until their feet bled. Those who collapsed were beaten, left behind, or killed. The sun scorched by day, the cold gnawed by night. Hunger was constant. Whispers traveled down the line. Rumors of ships larger than villages, of white men with pale faces and strange tongues. But nothing could prepare them for the sight of the coast. There, towering above the shoreline, stood the slave forts. Stone prisons built by European powers, British, Dutch, Portuguese, designed to hold human cargo. Inside, Kwame was thrown into a dark cell, crammed with dozens of others. The stench of sweat, blood, and waste was unbearable. Days blurred into weeks. Each morning, the guards dragged out bodies of those who hadn't survived the night. And then came the branding. Iron heated in fire, flesh seared, screams echoed against stone walls. The mark was a symbol of ownership, burned deep into skin as if to erase the person beneath. For Kwame, the pain was sharp, but the shame was sharper, stripped not only of freedom, but of humanity. Finally, the day arrived. The gates opened and the captives were driven to the beach. Waiting for them were the ships, floating prisons. Dark hulls looming against the horizon, sails stretched like wings of vultures. On the deck, iron chains clattered. Kwame was forced below, into the belly of the vessel. The Middle Passage had begun. The hold was a world of darkness. Wooden shelves, called slave decks, barely 2 feet high where captives were chained shoulder to shoulder, unable to sit upright. The air was thick with sweat, vomit, and rot. The creak of timbers, the splash of waves, the groan of the ship blended with the coughing, the crying, the prayers of the enslaved. Food was scarce, beans, rice, or gruel forced into mouths. Water, brackish, rationed. Disease spread quickly, dysentery, smallpox, fever. Each morning, the crew hauled corpses up the ladder and threw them into the sea. The splash was followed by silence. Kwame tried to remember the rhythm of drums, the sound of his mother's voice, but the cries around him drowned out memory. Yet even in chains, Whispers of resistance moved through the hold. Captives spoke of escape, of revolts, of leaping into the waves to deny their captors victory. Hope flickered like a candle in the storm. The Middle Passage was not only a journey of suffering, it was also a battlefield. Some captives chose death over slavery. At the first opportunity, they hurled themselves into the sea, preferring the embrace of the ocean to the chains of captivity. To the crew, these were cargo losses. To the captives, they were acts of defiance. Others fought back. Slave ship revolts were rare but fierce. Armed with nothing but chains, fists, and desperation, groups of captives rose against their captors. Some succeeded, seizing ships and steering them homeward. Many failed, cut down by swords or muskets. Kwame became part of one such attempt. One night, as the moon glowed faint through the grates, whispers passed from captive to captive. When the hatch opened, they would strike. The moment came. Chains rattled as men surged forward, attacking guards with raw strength. Kwame threw himself into the struggle, his hands still bound. For a moment, freedom felt within reach. The deck above, the night air, the open sea. But the crew was prepared. Muskets fired, whips cracked. Blood stained the planks. The rebellion was crushed. Survivors were punished brutally, beaten, chained even tighter, forced to eat in silence. Kwame survived, but his spirit bore scars as deep as his body. He had tasted the possibility of freedom and the bitter weight of failure. The Middle Passage consumed weeks, sometimes months. For every 100 captives who left Africa, only about 80 survived to reach the Americas. The rest lay at the bottom of the Atlantic, a graveyard stretching across oceans. Kwame lived, but survival came at a cost he would carry forever. The day land appeared on the horizon. The captives were too weak to cheer, too broken to hope. The ship docked in the Americas, Jamaica, Barbados, Charleston, Bahia, any of the countless ports where human lives were sold like cattle. The Middle Passage was more than a journey across the sea. It was the beginning of a system of bondage that shaped the Americas for centuries. The trauma, the resilience, the loss, it echoes still. Kwame's story is fictional, but his suffering was real for millions. Between the 1500s and 1800s, an estimated 12.5 million Africans were forced across the Atlantic. About 2 million died during the voyage. Their voices were silenced, their stories buried, but their legacy remains. This was Kwame's journey, but it is also the story of millions whose names we will never know. Their cries were swallowed by the waves, but their struggle shaped the world we live in today. If you found this story important, don't let it be forgotten. Like this video, subscribe to our channel, and explore our playlist on hidden histories of slavery and resistance. Because remembering is resistance, and silence is complicity.